Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everybody, this is not Chrism with a much lighter voice today. This is Amelia Sintara, and I am just opening the show today as we wait for Chrism to come online. I just want you to hold on for 2 minutes and I will be back to you again, okay? There'll be a little silence for a moment and then I will return to you. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I guess this is working. I'm not the host, evidently, but Amelia's the host, and she doesn't seem to be talking right now.
Okay, Chrism. I have just been talking for the last 5 minutes, but obviously nobody has heard me.
Right. That's what happens when you sign in with the host and you don't press your microphone.
No, I've pressed my microphone. I signed in with the host because you weren't there and the time was going. So,
right.
Yeah. So my
Go ahead
microphone
and make your announcement, Amelia.
And I opened the show with an and all, Chrism.
Great. Nobody heard it.
Nobody heard it. And I was in a panic because I was just trying to decide, it's gone the time, what will I do? So I came out of being on the phone in case something had happened with you or that we were doing what we had done for the last couple of weeks where I hosted. So I'm expecting you to be there. So anyway, it doesn't matter, we're both here now. So I make the announcements then.
Go ahead. Do the Om and go ahead. Just do it again.
Okay. Hello everybody and welcome to Blog Talk Radio for today's conversation with Chrism, who is just waiting for me to do the announcements and then he will be online. So the announcement is, if you want to make a donation, there is a place you can go on the web, and that is to www.ascension-kundalini.blogspot.com. And there on the upper right-hand corner, you will see the donate button. And as I say every week, it is an easy thing to do once you get that far to follow the instructions on how to make a donation. You do need a credit card or you need that sort of an ability to make a donation there. And if that is not, if you want to make a donation in some other way, you can contact me at kundalinimatters@gmail.com and we can talk about other ways to make a donation. But at the moment, www.ascension-kundalini.blogspot.com is probably the most efficient and quickest way to make that donation. So that's it, Chrism. Here I am, and I will now go to the phone lines while you speak and see who is here listening.
Here you is, and welcome everybody to this conversation about your Kundalini awakening experience. And I'd like to welcome Phil Karuba. I'd like to welcome Nudges and Mary Jean and Knowing Star Woman. Helly High Nonan, guest 1211, guest 12107, guest 1206, Vashti Elizabeth Dalton Gonzalez, and of course, our hostess for this show today, Her Holiness, the Queen of Questionable Comforts, Amelia Santara. I'd like to say hello to her husband, John, as well, who may be listening to this. And I'd like to welcome Bruno Rodriguez. Hello, Mr. Rodriguez. I am finally at home after going across the nation. Very an interesting journey, I have to say. The Penske truck broke down 4 times in the middle of nowhere, so we had plenty of fun keeping our are cool and trusting in the Shakti, and doing our best not to look for negative omens, because oh my gosh, the truck is breaking down, and oh my gosh, because this young lady is making a very, very big commitment, moving from the East Coast out of a 4 to 5 bedroom house into a 1-bedroom apartment. Plenty of downsizing to do, plenty of packing, and everything was very, very it's a big deal to do that, and I honor her. And I see Phil Kruba's asking about the sound quality, and I am speaking here right into the phone, my friends, right into the phone. Hello. As she says, it was one hell of a trip. So yeah, it was definitely one heck of a trip, and but I'm glad the trip was made. I was allowed to visit Mr. Fast G. Ford, and that was a blessing in and of itself. So it's nice to be back here in Santa Rosa. It's nice to be with Lasha again and with all the animals here again. And for those of you who have visited, you know that I live in a place that is owned by Francine, and she has a cockatoo, 2 little dogs, and a horse, and I have goldfish. So nice to see the family again, and so, oops, there we go. All right, so today's conversation about your Kundalini awakening experience is that very subject. What level of sacrifice is appropriate to the Kundalini? What will you not do? And it's very different from how will you not show, the many different qualities of love, But in this case, what? Just reading the chat group here is like, I got 2 15-inch speakers or something like that. What was that? Mary Jean, Karuba, 2 15-inch speakers.
Chrism, are you seeing the studio as well, so you can see the people who are phoning in, and you can see the red and the blue mic?
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you for asking. So the sacrifice. What does the word sacrifice mean? That which is given into divinity for a purpose of a physical nature or a mental nature. What does sacrifice mean? Something that you do on faith and trust. You give up something that you may gain something else. What does sacrifice mean to you? And within a Kundalini context, what does sacrifice mean? And I'm going to give you my version of the meaning. It's just you are willing to give up your old habits. You are willing to give up that which is familiar, but that which may no longer serve you. You're willing to take a chance, as Brooke has done, to go from, to move 3,000 miles away into a foreign environment, a foreign social environment, and really begin to build a Kundalini life that is all Kundalini. None of the old life gets to come here. And she'll tell you herself, I'm sure, that it's a real struggle to do that. How do you build your life anew? And, after making such a sacrifice, and, it's a very big challenge, and she's meeting that challenge, meeting it well. But in the challenges in your life, some of you, you have some very, very strong possession-based experiences where entities have come upon you and they've tried to control your life. They've tried to basically dominate your consciousness in your body so they can begin to basically corrupt your life pattern. What sacrifice did you make in order to learn how to work with that, to learn how to continuously take charge of your life, to take charge of your destiny? What did you have to sacrifice? What is working well for a person within that type of a scenario? It's really I guess no one's being able to hear this then, huh? Should I call back in?
What?
It looks like Knowing Star Woman can't hear me, and I guess Phil Karuba is gone. That's weird. Is the sound coming through for most of you okay? Can somebody go ahead and start typing?
Yeah. Start typing and let us know. Yeah, Helen says we hear you.
We okay. All right then. Bashji, no.
Bashji says no. It's going to be one of those times, I think, Chrism, where some people will and some people won't. And unless there's an absolute, consensus, let's assume that we're being heard and not spend too much time. Yeah, people. Okay, Bashji is back again. He says yes.
I wonder if I should just call back. I mean, I can do that with this phone. What do you think?
You sound perfectly fine to me, and you sound perfectly fine to other people.
I can hear now, but not the others. Bashji, are you hearing this now? I mean, type me again, would you, guy? Here he goes. He's typing now.
Mary Jean says it's perfect.
Oh, okay. All right. And he is coming through loud and clear. Oh, my gosh. Okay, very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Very nice of you. Bill, I hope you're able to hear at this point. Anyway, so as you make such a great sacrifice to the Kundalini, what are you willing to change? How are you willing to change it? And why are you willing to do this? I mean, the obvious why answer would be because the Kundalini, will give you a fragmentation or some other really fun experience if you continuously resist it. So that's one thing. Another thing would be that it is furthering your spiritual evolutionary goals. A lot of what I run into on the groups. Oh, and Amelia, if you could, if you go into the groups and start collecting your questions, I'm not sure you've had time to do that.
No, I've had time.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I know
Superwoman.
Superwoman. I got to say, I want to. I do want.
Just pass.
Oh,
don't.
I do want to put out a thank you, a great thank you to Amelia, because Blog Talk was giving her a really, really, really hard time today, and we were looking at not even being able to do the show, and she just kept at it. She kept at it, and finally, this megalith Blog Talk finally responded to her, and so I want to say a thank you to Amelia Santara for her hard work in bringing this show to all of us. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. Sacrifice of a Kundalini nature can be really, really dramatic or very, 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 very soft. I mean, it's going to depend on you and how far you want to go with it. To some degree. To some other degree, the Kundalini will just demand it. It will demand that you make certain sacrifices. And as we've spoken before on the show, it will demand that you change your food. It will demand that you change your exercise habits. It will demand that you change your sexual habits. It will demand many levels of change for a person, within this evolutionary paradigm. And so, in many ways, you don't get a choice about it. You can even injure yourself to not want to do a practice, or even on a self-inflicted passive aggression, and it still doesn't go away. And I was just speaking with somebody today, I forget what it was, but you don't get to run away from the Kundalini. You can't get away from it. It's inside you. You can't run away from that which is inside you. And so, for those of you that would just want to run away from this, it's like, oh my God, I've just had it with this. I don't want to do this anymore. Well, you don't get an option. It's going to do you. Even if you don't do it, it's going to do you. And the sacrifice in this case maybe sacrificing the ego control that is dominating the consciousness, sacrificing that need to be right, sacrificing that need to be coddled, that need to be, dominant, sacrificing that need to be, validated for being smart or being strong or being, competent or confident or things, validating the things of the ego that will support, ego aggrandizement, that support your level of the ego-based self. That person who is even now listening to this program and kind of going, well, what do you mean sacrificing the ego? What do you mean sacrificing the self? And I mean that exactly. I mean, you can even do it to the point where you're just talking to the Kundalini within you and saying, Kundalini in me, I sacrifice my ego self-importance to you. I give to you that identity that ego has allowed me to create and that I've created through ego since I was a baby. Okay. This goes that deep. This isn't about just, adopting a character like you're reading a script on stage. This is a stage that is within your heart, if you're going to use that analogy. This stage is in your heart. The script is the writing that's on your soul, the writing that your karma is the author of. You have reached an area of magnificence in your evolution that now you must surrender. You must sacrifice. You're not getting the option. In many ways, it's like, and I'm being shown this right now, it's like you're flying a kite and a tornado comes up behind you, and not only the kite is in the air flying around, but so are you. And when you're flying around the outside of a tornado, you don't really have any control. You don't control what you run into or what runs into you. You don't control where you're going to land, if you're going to land. You don't control if you're going to live or if you're going to die. Some people, literally, in the Midwest of the United States have been picked up by a tornado and landed perfectly fine. They have been flown through the air and landed perfectly fine and are alive today to speak of it. So this analogy is not so far out. I mean, it is far out because, how many people, the amount of people that die from a tornado far outweigh the amount of people that are picked up and flown around and then live. But that is the scenario. That is the level of sacrifice. Sacrifice your level of ego-based control to your Kundalini and do it in the language that you spoke or the first language that you learned. So if your first language was Spanish, then you sacrifice, you say those words in Spanish. If your first language was English, then say it in English. Or French, say it in French. German, whatever the language is to you, you say it in the language that you learned first. Okay, this really brings it home to you. This makes it personal. Now, if you have a question about this or any of the other topics that pertain to your Kundalini Awakening experience, I want you to call in. The guest call in is 347-934-0026. And I'm going to bring Santara on. Oh, my God, an earthquake. There's a question mark next to this Chrism person. Can you ask and see if he has a question?
Yes, I can, of course. Hello, Chrism. Do you have a question?
Well, I was wondering if this Chrism guy, how does he really know anything about Kundalini? What's up with that? Can you ask him that?
I can, of course. I suspect it's his experience, though, but I will ask. Hello, Chrism.
Yes, hello.
Are you there? Hi.
I'm here.
can I ask you, how come you know so much about all of this? How come you're an authority on this subject that you're speaking on?
Well, an authority. That makes me feel like the federal government. I've had awakened Kundalini for 26 years, and I came into this life with that which remains upon the death of the individual. I.e., what I mean by that is when you have Kundalini awaken upon you, like Fashti does, like Elizabeth does, like Kelly does, like Bruno does, and you, some of the other folks here on the chat group, when you die, Kundalini remains. It is beyond time. It doesn't really diminish with time. It doesn't diminish with age. And it doesn't diminish with death. It is beyond death. It follows you. It is attached to you permanently. So the next life that you will have a Kundalini awakened childhood, which typically means you won't know why you have all these skills. You won't know why you know all these things. You only know that you know it. And after you get slapped around a little bit by life, you will know that it's not something that you really want to talk about with others. Okay. You will learn that, the hard way probably, that it's not something you want to brag about or to hold other people up to you in comparison and say, oh, look, see, I'm more powerful than that. So that's what happened to me. And I never did do that. I never did. Interestingly enough, I never did try to show off with that. It was just never occurred to me to do that. It always kind of frightened me, and I think that's probably a real happy grace that occurred that way. So this is how I know, and it's not like you can read books about this. I mean, yes, you can read books. Sophie Chrism's book, you can read his book, or some of the other books that are out there that people are using, but the real book is the book of karma that your Kundalini has written for you, and the levels of information that are automatically downloaded into your brain. For me, the download just happened to be all about these issues that I speak of. It was all about being somebody who could help other people inside of this awakening event. That is my sacrifice. That is my sacrifice. That is what I do all the time now. I sacrificed being president of the United States. I know. I could have been a contender. I sacrificed being a Hollywood star. Marlon Brando's position in the Cinema Hall of Fame is safe now. I sacrificed being a great musician, so Beethoven and Mozart and Stevie Wonder have no worries. And I didn't really have a choice about this, ladies and gentlemen, just like you may not have choices in this. I am doing what I'm here to do. And, I go with that as much as I can go. And I'm going to suggest that your life. I know that Bruno is a construction owner. He owns a construction company. That is what he's here to do right now. And Elizabeth Dalton-Gonzalez, she's a flautist extraordinaire, and so she teaches the flute to many, many people, up there in the state of Washington, and I tip my hat to her because flute is not easy. She's also following her agenda, the Kundalini agenda. And, I see. And Bill Karuba is coming back with, I have sound on my iPad without chat, and I have chat on my PC with no sound. Sounds like you have Kundalini there, Phil. I know that feeling. When you have the Kundalini awakened within you, you will begin to sacrifice those things that your ego may have wanted to pursue for whatever reason, whether it was want of gain or want of fame or want of, whatever it would be that you would want. It's very, very challenging to the ego sometimes to have its goals and its idea of its destiny ripped out, from under it. And for a while, it's just going to be bobbling there because that sacrifice has to be made. That sacrifice has to be made. And I want you to look at that. I want you to look at your own sacrifice. We're not all, supposed to be, a movie star or a politician or things like that. Some of us are, but not all of us are. And so, now, just to back up a little bit, I'd like to see many, many, many more Kundalini awakened people become politicians, only because of the incorruptibility that I think would surface in at least a few of them, because the divine would be speaking so strongly through them. But it's still not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to just, do the Kundalini instead of do what you got a PhD to do, or do what you got some sort of a college certification to do. And yet the Kundalini will be the strongest force. And so you must sacrifice to the Kundalini. You must give that of yourself into the Kundalini to, allow it to control your career choices. Allow it to control how you love, who you love, if you love, why you love. Who are you having a relationship with? Look at that these days. Sometimes you may have to sacrifice a marriage or a relationship because the Kundalini is insisting that it be so. And oftentimes you'll find, sorry about that, folks, smack right in the ears here. Oftentimes you will find that marriage that the Kundalini is suggesting you sacrifice is not serving you at all. Not serving you at all. And this is very, very important to understand, that even though you may find comfort in complacency, the Kundalini won't necessarily let you stay there. Will not necessarily let you stay there. So this is about sacrifice, ladies and gentlemen. Being willing and being open to make the difficult changes that may sometimes be asked of you by your Kundalini awakening equation. Does the Kundalini ask you to move coast to coast? Does the Kundalini, ask you to reach outside of a social paradigm that you've been raised with from birth, and totally contradict that social security, that sociological, emotional security? Is it asking you to give your love in areas that you would have never, ever considered before? Is it asking you to step over taboos and levels of societal-based fear, parameters and limitations? Is it asking you to do that? And if so, how are you responding? I'm going to suggest that you follow the Kundalini. You follow what it's putting you through. You follow what it is presenting to you. Do not, through fear of through fear of ridicule or fear of not being accepted, a lack of acceptance, lack of social acceptance, allow yourself to be motivated away from sacrificing to the Kundalini. And I'd like to welcome Tanya. Hello, Tanya. And a person named Mars Sentinel who was typing. Hello, Mars Sentinel. Okay, so really, really look at this. Really look at how you're receiving the sacrificial phenomena that the Kundalini is suggesting for you. And I'll tell you what, all of you are getting it. Even if you're just exploring the possibility of Kundalini awakening. Dave from Washington. Hello, my friend. Good to see you. Good to see you. Nice to see you. Great. So let's talk about having Kriyas. Let's talk about having Kriyas come upon you, and what what are you going to do when you have those strong physical kriyas come upon you? Are you going to resist it? Or are you going to sacrifice whatever it was doing, whatever you were doing at that time? You're, getting dressed, or you were doing, prayers, to God, or whatever you were doing. Those kriyas come up, and you have to do them. Well, I'm suggesting that you expand that analogy even further. You expand the analogy even further, and Tanya, it is good to see you as well, my dear. You expand the analogy even further, and you allow yourself to sacrifice an aspect of living your life to the Kundalini in the way it wants you to do that, and it'll be very specific. So, for instance, if you're having strong physical kriyas, well, then you are to allow that to occur, and you are to sacrifice whatever it is you're doing in order to let that occur. Okay? So if you have any questions about this, feel free to call 347-934-0026. And our hostess, Amelia Santara, will be happy to take your call. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring Her Holiness on board. Are you ready there, Amelia? I'm going to put you in the red. You notice I didn't make any comments about plumbing issues in Ireland, right? I just want you to know that.
Thank you. That is deeply appreciated. And I know soon you won't even have to refer to plumbing at all. Okay.
Okay, well, my dear, let's go ahead and start off with some of these questions that you have.
Okay. Excuse the noise while I reach for the... Okay, here we go.
Oh,
I have some...
Dave, wait a minute. Dave,
yes?
Dave is... We met Dave at the Kundalini at the Castle seminar, and so I just want to say hello to Dave. Dave is one coming out as Mars Sentinel, and he says, Kriyas at work. Oh my God! Find a quiet place and let it flow. Welcome it. You are so right, Dave. You are so right, and I tell you, when I watch you have those kriyas, you definitely flow. You definitely flow. You are. It's really beautiful to watch, my friend, and it's good to see you here. Please continue, Amelia.
And I concur. It was beautiful to watch Dave in that flow with Kundalini and surrendering to what the Kundalini was doing with him. It would be wonderful if everybody could have seen that, because it was beautiful. Okay, so the questions. I have one. You mentioned there about spouses. So there is a question that says, this is from the groups, is it normal to feel detached from your spouse? And is that a Kundalini phase?
It is most definitely normal to be detached not only from your spouse, but you can be detached from everything. You can be detached from your job. You can be detached from your children even. You can be detached from your spouse. You can be detached from your parents. You can feel this great level of detachment, but it's not a detachment that is based in negativity. It is a quality of Kundalini that is suggesting to you through tactility, through experience, rather than through, mental suggestion. It's being given to you through experience. It's like many of the Kundalini teachings are, including, the kriyas that Dave mentions. It's a level of detachment from materiality, from physicality, from being totally governed and controlled by the five senses, by the expectations of the ego, by the expectations of love and being loved and giving love. And it is a stage that you will go through. You certainly don't want to just divorce your spouse now because you feel, unattached to them. You have to realize this is a stage of the Kundalini as the person is suggesting. And yes, indeed, this will pass and your love will come. Your love will return, but it will be love of a much higher quality. It'll be a love that can encompass far more, more of a non-judgmental love, a comprehensive love that is like that has the reverence of, you know, a lover's caress and a baby's dependency. You know, a love based upon, you know, the spectrum between those two elements. It has a great degree of transformation attached to it. So when you're not feeling attached to people, or you're feeling detached, it's just a phase. It is a pre-Kundalini programming phase, and it's allowing you to feel levels of grace that do not totally rely on the emotional body or the physical emotional body or the egoic body that has expectations of love, either receiving or giving. Over.
Okay, thank you. It can be difficult, though, Chrism, just to say, you know, when a person begins to experience that first, to realize that it's just a phase and that there isn't anything wrong and that it's okay. Because I can remember feeling detached and thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. But when you stop thinking like that and just allow what's unfolding to happen, it becomes, it's a very different thing. It's a bit like, you know, I remember when I didn't understand about, I was crying. And then when I heard the information that there's such a thing as crying kriyas or emotional kriyas, it changed my perspective, and I was able to remove my previous thoughts about what crying was. Well, detachment, I think, is very like that with Kundalini, isn't it? Once you receive the information, you can take a different perspective on it and leave it be.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. And yeah, so this is good. This is good. Thank you for that further.
There's another question that's asking about a phase. They're wondering about a phase. They're saying, and this was a private question, since my awakening last year, my brain has turned to mush. It's like having Alzheimer's. Is this a phase?
It is a phase. It is a phase, and you just need to allow it to occur. Try not to do any heavy arithmetic, or if you have a job that causes you to have to be really, really coordinated and things of that nature, allow the Kundalini to really, really help you in that way. I don't think it will come to you in a way that you cannot handle it. I really think that it will come to you in a way where you can have and hold the Kundalini at the same time, even though your mental processes may not be so sharp. It may not be so sharp. Now, I'm being compelled by my Kundalini right now. She wants me to talk about a very specific thing, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about this. I'm just going to put the questions, Amelia, on hold for a moment, okay?
Yep. Okay.
All right. Excuse me. The subject has to deal with difficulty, the degree of difficulty with what it is to be a private student, and the many, many, many qualities of difficulty that will be. And that is wrapped around giving yourself to the Kundalini from a vantage point where a trinity is formed. So you're giving yourself not only to the Kundalini within you, but you're also giving yourself to the Kundalini teacher. And you're giving yourself in so many amazing ways that it becomes very, very, very difficult for a person to withstand. And in actuality, it is being made as difficult as possible for you, for the stress of the situation to begin to drive up levels of impurities that your ego will never, ever let you do on your own. You would never be allowed to do that either, unless through ayahuasca or something like that. But your ego can form huge levels of blockages that can last for many, many years. And I'm really getting the indication from the Kundalini that we don't have many, many years. The divine wants more Kundalini people intact in the society at this time, right now. Certainly not everybody. I'm not buying into this, let us all ascend at the same time. To me, that's silly. People come here with different karmas. They come here to work through different karmas. They're not all on somebody's little weird New Age time schedule. Okay, but I am seeing a definite need, a definite drive towards Kundalini information being given out there, and given by people who are actually feeling it and experiencing it. And when you're a private student, you are extreme levels of difficulty for your ego to handle, and it is hard. And it goes against every rule. It goes against every taboo. It goes against, I think it was Julia that posted these cult rules. Let me look for those. Oh, let me go back here. The great rules of being a cult person. It's, this is a very, very, very important aspect of the Kundalini awakening, simply because it's dealing with areas that go against our understandings of life, and how we choose to live it in our society. It goes against this, and if I can get it here on the web, I'm going to do that. I think this is it right here. Now, this is great. The 10 warning signs of a potential unsafe group leader. Absolute authoritarianism without meaningful accountability. Well, this is what the Kundalini does. It has absolute authority over you totally and with no accountability. It has none. Okay? And it will bridge that right over to the teacher as well. And so, once again, we're starting to get into really slippery areas here. Another one says, no tolerance for questions or critical inquiry. In other words, the ego's not going to be allowed to feed its mind or to feed its desire to have its answers given to it just for the asking of it. I have found that I answer a lot of questions, and the Kundalini also, for every 10 questions that I will answer, it will answer maybe a quarter of one question. But I know that, and this is what the individual will experience. No meaningful financial disclosure regarding budget expenses, such as, well, I'm pretty, broke is broke, right? I mean, so that there you have that. I mean, that's about as meaningful as you're going to get. Unreasonable fear about the outside world, such as impending catastrophe, evil conspiracies, and persecutions. Well, this will be given to a person by the entities that begin to attach to them, but by, if they haven't been practicing the safeties, if they're not practicing the levels of forgiveness, the levels of tolerance, the levels of honesty, the levels of truth, well, they will be very, very susceptible to amazing levels of fear. Amazing levels of fear that include impending catastrophes like earthquakes or evil conspiracies like the Illuminati or persecutions, that do exist, but they don't really need to exist within that person's Kundalini awakening equation, unless, of course, it does, and it's a viable thing that they have to deal with. Let's see, there is no legitimate reason to leave. Former followers are always wrong in leaving negative or even evil. Well, you never get to leave Kundalini. You never get to leave it. So there is no legitimate reason to leave. And I'm just going to skip through. There are records, books, news articles that document the abuses of the group leader. Well, I certainly have that. Not to say that they're true, but, they're certainly out there. Followers feel they can never be good enough. Well, that's kind of an individual ego thing, really. And so I'm going to stop right there. I mean, there's plenty. It's on the big group. I mean, anybody can go there. Just put cult in the search window, and you can see what I'm talking about. But this is, this illustrates how total the Kundalini is in its command to the person that it is transforming. This is how total it is. When a person comes to me, as a few have, and they undergo the one-on-one teaching, it is not an easy parameter. let me ask you, Amelia, how easy is it?
It's not easy, Chrism. It's very difficult. I've been your private student for quite a few years now, and you certainly put me under stress in ways that, you were saying about it brings up, levels of blockages or impurities, I think, that can be cleared. And yeah, I know from my experience that the stress you can place upon me sometimes, is really, really difficult, really, really hard. I mean, you can be mean. People don't believe it really, but it's true. And it's easier to see when you're in person, but you can be really mean. And my ego can rage against some of the things that it feels are unjust and it's not fair and, all this sort of thing. And a case can certainly be made sometimes for that because my ego can do that. And I know from experience, though, Chrism, that what actually rises in me during these times of stress has unblocked things for me, has allowed me to actually see things that I know I would never have seen. And, that sounds so easy. It's not as easy as that, but because that has been my experience, and I can now trust that, you see. I can trust that because it has been my experience. And I mean, it's the same thing, I know that the Kundalini has given you to me as my teacher. And so the experience, step by step by step, I can trust that. But that doesn't mean that it is ever easy. It's probably easier for me now because I'm down the road and all that experience has built one on top of the other. And so I can say from where I am now, really and truly, the difficulty of being a private student is the best thing that ever happened to me in the context of my Kundalini awakening, because I would not be where I am in my process without having had you be that difficult teacher for me. And yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure that's not always easy for the teacher, but that's not what we're talking about. So, yeah, it's not easy being a student, but I would recommend people to do it if that is what they feel guided to do by their Kundalini. And once you begin the path and once you begin to learn about the stress from one situation to the next, you can add that to your portfolio of experience and understand that what's being released from you and how you become that person that the Kundalini wants for you to be evolves through that process. That's my experience anyway.
I'm going to ask you, what part of an ego teardown comfortable?
Ask me that again slowly.
What
no,
part
seriously.
of don't make me laugh.
Go on.
What part of an ego teardown is easy?
No part of an ego teardown is easy, Chrism.
How long does an ego teardown take, do you think?
As long as it takes. Mine is taking, I've been at it a while. I mean, I'm at it since 2009 when I became your student, and it's still in process. It's still in process.
Why would you continue with this terrible mean teacher?
I thought I just explained that. Do you mean everything I just said was not clear? Because...
What's the payoff? I mean, come on, people want a payoff. What's the payoff?
Oh my God, the payoff is huge. The payoff is, that's really interesting to put it into words. The payoff is freedom. Does that make sense? The payoff is peace. The payoff is coming to know the the me that I actually am, the divinity and the divine and the pure goddess, really, that I am, like how I am to be in this world, and that expands as the ego control over me diminishes. So that's the payoff. Who wouldn't want that? It's what the awakening, allowed to unfold in me or grow in me. It's the plan of the Kundalini for me. I mean, I know that, and I feel that, and there's been a huge change in my life through surrendering to the Kundalini and through surrendering to my teacher. My life is, it's totally. I mean, I'm the same person, but I'm a different person to the person I once was, and I like it. I like me. I like what I'm doing in the world now in a much better way than I had been doing it. And blah, blah, blah. Does that answer it?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and put you here in the blue, and I'm going to bring Rosemary, Her Holiness, on. Hello, Rosemary.
Hi there, Chrism.
Have you been listening to our conversation?
Yes, I have, and I have a guest here at my table, and someone you know. Joey is here also.
Hey, Joey, good to hear you. Good to see you, sort of, kind of, in a weird Kundalini way.
Oh, good to hear all you have to say. You have a lot to say.
I do. At least the Kundalini does, and the Kundalini would like to know from you, Rosemary, what is the point of having your ego tore down by the Kundalini within and by the Kundalini outside of yourself? What's the point of this?
The point is because it, although it acts like it knows what's what and has power, it doesn't, and it's deceiving. It's
well, what are you talking about? What quality are you talking about right now?
Well, the quality that of all the little details of my life it has governed my life forever.
Are you talking about the ego?
The ego, and it's self-serving. So that if I want to, as I know all along, but not always with words, wanted to be an expression of the Creator who is in me. The ego is an expression of itself, and it gets in the way. It can be, when it's quieted a bit, it can be helpful and is needed in daily life.
Why do such dramatic measures need to be taken against the ego by the physical teacher?
Just because it's so stubborn. I mean, I've always been a stubborn person, so mine's even more stubborn, but I think it's self-serving. And it's blind. It doesn't, it only has itself as a guide to survive.
And it's a terrible dictator.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay, all right. Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much.
You know me, so you can agree.
Actually, Rosemary, I find you to be a very, very charitable, beautiful, loving, kind, considerate, honest, and truthful individual. That's how I perceive you. That's how I know you. But the Kundalini will get under the fingernails of people, and it will begin to dissect that which maybe even the individual consciousness doesn't even know. And so, I got really sidetracked in this conversation today. I was very strongly compelled to start talking about this, and I think I've covered it in some other programs here, but evidently not enough. So yeah, the flesh teacher can also be very, very dictator-ish as well. I mean, I've been called a Adolf, and I've been saluted Nazi style, by people that are kind of sarcastically, not receiving well, the degree of difficulty that is required for a person to take. And I totally get that. I'm certainly not saying that if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't be doing the same darn thing. But, it is a very, very, very strong level of commitment. It's a very strong level of transformation that a person is going through. I mean, you are literally being forced from an outside world that is limitless into a cocoon that is acting like a star chamber, a pressure star chamber, and that is squeezing you from every angle, from top to bottom, bottom to top, side to side, and being forced to change, forced to undergo a teaching presentation that is outside of the complacency comfort zone that society gives for us. Not an easy thing, and it's something that must be experienced. You can sit here and talk to it till the cows come home. You can talk about it, but it's not the same as actually experiencing it. So, for those of you who have experienced it, Rosemary, Eileen, Amelia, and Brooke, who's experiencing it right now, this is not an easy scenario. This is not something that can just be metabolized in a day. And your ego will create every opportunity it can create in order to short circuit this process within you. It wants to be in control, and it will do everything it can do to remain in control. And I see Phil is typing. Hello, Phil. So it's very, very, very important that people begin to realize this. And as I was reading, earlier from these things, the group leader is always right. Well, I got to tell you, this is from that cult thing again. 10 warning signs of a potentially unsafe group leader. This is put out from a website called the Cult Education Institute. Cult Education Institute, and the group leader is always right. Well, where I can't think of anywhere in my experience that the Kundalini has been wrong. I can tell you plenty of places where my ego has been wrong. I'll tell you what. But I've never seen a single place that the Kundalini has been incorrect. I have never seen a single place where divinity has made a mistake. Okay, and then Phil Karuba is writing, is it safe to say that within the Kundalini context, there was no such thing as free will? In other words, all the negative things that occurred in our lives which brought us to the spinal sweep were meant to happen. I could not agree with you more, Phil. I think you're absolutely right on target with that. And is somebody else saying no sound? Somebody else is saying no sound. So okay, just.
So can we ask on the chat room, are you all hearing okay? Elizabeth has just left and other people have logged out. Helly? Vashti? No, Helly can still hear us, Chrism. Yeah,
I can hear
people.
fun.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I've never seen a point in time where the divinity has been mistaken. I can see plenty of times where the ego of the person has been mistaken, but never a time where Kundalini itself has been mistaken. And it's very interesting to. Good, thank you, Bruno, and thank you, Dave. Elizabeth says I'm back. Well, okay, I am back.
Will you,
yes,
Chrism,
yes.
will you scroll back up to Phil's question about free will? Is it safe to say that within the Kundalini context? Yeah.
Phil is right on target. For those of us that were going to have the Kundalini in our life, everything that we had to experience in order to, leading right up to the spinal sweep, as Phil suggests, had to happen. This had to happen for us. Even coming into the presence of a mean, terrible teacher like poor Amelia had to withstand and continues to withstand, and Eileen, Rosemary, Brooke. Even to that point, even to the terrible orchestrations of bringing those ego issues to the surface of the person that the person themselves wouldn't even be able to bring up. Even to that point, this has had to occur. And this will occur. This will occur. Now, the Kundalini will do it. It doesn't require a flesh teacher, but it does for some people. It does require that trinity, that the Kundalini in the teacher and representing itself within the teacher and itself within the student equals one divine consciousness. And then the two other people, the student that has the Kundalini and the teacher that has the Kundalini, that equals a trinity, a triad of teaching. These can be very, very, very powerful levels of teaching, and I know why that the Kundalini, brings people into having this, because of the rapidity of the education and the deep levels of sacredness and sanctity that can occur within this. When you're just sitting alone by your house and the Kundalini, is with you, but you're still with your ego in a very real way, the depth and the level of sanctity and sacredness, is always going to be kind of limited by the level of the ego and how far the ego is willing to go. And that is going to form the comfy zones that the person will operate. Well, not so much with the real live in-your-face teacher. Real live in-your-face teacher, he knows she can see what is being hidden. She knows what to do with that person. He knows. He is listening to his Kundalini, and the Kundalini is communicating to him. The Kundalini will communicate to him through the student, by many different ways. By giving certain dreams, by giving, some sort of a sign or a waking vision, or something along that level. The Kundalini will explain. It will explain itself, but even that may not be good enough for the ego of the student. That's just like, oh well, okay, I'm trying, and then they just move right in, to their ego expression. And this is very important for people to understand. It is hard having a real Kundalini teacher call you on all your stuff. It's very, very difficult. And it's not for everybody. I'm sure of that. If it was for everybody, I'd have a lot more people over here doing it. But I know it isn't for everybody, and certainly it doesn't do the Kundalini teacher's web presence any favors. It doesn't do the reputation any favors. But you know what? Reputation is all about ego, isn't it? Worried about your reputation. Well, you're worried about how other people think about you. You're worried about your ego and how it feels other people are thinking about it. See what I'm saying? And Dave is writing, and he's saying the Saturn teacher is all about discipline. So he's going into astrology here. He specializes in always doing the unexpected, and he carries a stick so he can suddenly whack any student who gets out of line. His role is to give the discipline and the limits. And that was from Yogi Bhajan. I find Kundalini reaches far beyond astrology. Astrology, you live a certain level of life in each astrological sign in order to get to the Kundalini. But I can see the point that Dave is making through Yogi Bhajan. And I am not a follower of Yogi Bhajan by any means or stretch or anything. But I do see the wisdom in what this is saying. And I also, this is echoed very clearly in the Tibetan Buddhism ways as well. In the schools that they call Chakpuris, you as a child, even all, like say a 12-year-old kid, a boy. It's always going to be a boy because, of course, girls can't be holy. But a 12-year-old boy, they'll be taught to read the scriptures while they're eating breakfast, while they're eating lunch, while they're eating dinner. And if they move away from that focus, they are whacked by a guard that is watching each one of them with a big stick. They are whacked, and they quickly get back into the reading of the scriptures as they're eating their food. And so that's a very, very strong system. Kundalini will do this sometimes. I remember, resisting Kundalini. I resisted Kundalini at every step of the way at the beginning. I just was like, oh my gosh, forget this. I wanted nothing to do with this. And I resisted it, and I would get whacked. And I'd say, F you, and I'd get whacked again. I tell you what, I got whacked pretty hard, many, many times. And when Kundalini whacks you, it whacks you from the inside out. It's like getting whacked with that big stick from the inside out. And, the pain is amazing. It's nothing to what a flesh teacher gives at all. And so Kundalini, it will support that type of a teaching paradigm if it must. If that's what the ego in the person requires, then so be it. That's what the ego in that person is going to get. And I think I've had other people on here talking about fragmentations and how absolutely nothing goes right. You get no relationships, you get no work, you get nothing is going to work for you because the Kundalini doesn't want it to work for you. And so you're left spinning your wheels in a pool of stagnation because you keep trying to have ego fulfillment, and the Kundalini is just not going to let it happen. And so, it can be very, very, very difficult to have a in-flesh Kundalini teacher. And yet, the in-flesh Kundalini teacher is different with different students. It's not the same way. It's not like you're sitting in your 6th grade class and the teacher is treating everybody the same. Kundalini doesn't do that. It doesn't treat everybody the same because everybody's inside of a different equation. The Kundalini will treat you along the lines of the level of expression that your equation is giving. One person will get whacked, another person will get coddled, another person will be, told to that they're doing great. Another person will be, given even harder practices to do. I mean, it's different for each person. It is never, ever the same. It is never, ever, ever the same for any two individuals. Now, that being said, the safety protocols will help people in many, many different ways. The safety protocols will, their trans equation, i.e., they reach across the customized Kundalini equation that people have, and so what Ma Deva Sadhvi might be having, well, Mary Jean, she'll be having something completely different. Phil Karuba will be having something different from the other two, and yet the safeties will help all three of them. Everybody can be helped by the safeties. It will be metabolized by the Kundalini in themselves in the way that the Kundalini within themselves wants it to be metabolized. Okay, so if you have any questions about this, feel free to write something in the chat group, which I'm looking at right now. And if you'd like to call in, please call in at 347-934-0026. And I'm going to go back to Julia's thing about the cult here thingy. And it continues to say, 10 warning signs regarding people involved in a potentially unsafe group leader. Extreme obsessiveness regarding the group leader, resulting in the exclusion of almost every practical consideration. I don't know that the Kundalini would want you to be recognizing anything but itself or the teacher it gives you. Individual identity, the group, the leader, God as distinct and separate categories of existence become increasingly blurred. I don't know that the Kundalini can become blurred at all. The Kundalini is a very, very, very strong and distinct and clear leader. I mean, it is the boss. It's in charge. And instead, in the follower's mind, these identities become substantially, increasingly fused as that person's involvement with the group leader continues and deepens. Whenever the group leader is criticized or questioned, it is characterized as persecution. Yeah, well, that happens a lot. But you know what? I just deal with it. Uncharacteristically stilted and seemingly programmed conversation manners. Cloning of the group leader personal behavior. I don't know. I think people practicing the safeties could be seen as cloning, but it's more a cloning for themselves. It's more a cloning for who they are, how they are, what they want to be. And so Tanya is going to add to this. I get accused of being a cult all the time. I get accused of being a cult leader, and I have one student who is out here right now. I have I don't know, I'm not sure I follow the strict guidelines that one must have in order to be a successful cult leader. But I can see, even now Tanya writes, regarding the safeties, when I read them, I found that I was living in accordance with them all, just as a natural result of following my guidance. Except for the Tibetans and the breathing. For me, that was how I first knew that you were genuine. Well, I thank you for that kind consideration, Tanya. And the safeties were written by the Kundalini in me as a response to giving people Shaktipat before they should have it, in my opinion at least. Which was another ego-based thing that I went through. I didn't have enough trust in the Shakti at the time to know that the Shakti would give everybody what they can have and hold, not what they, not beyond that, right? But that was only my second seminar, and I had a lot to learn, back then in 2006. And so, I've learned a lot since then. But the Kundalini itself is what wrote those safeties, including the Tibetans and the breathing and all of that. So I just want to say that it's the Kundalini that is the genuine teacher here. I may be the flesh component of that, but it is the Kundalini that teaches. So thank you for that, Tanya. So any questions that you may have about that, I welcome you to ask. Because these are important things. Tanya continues, it's a strange cult. I'm sorry. She writes it. It's a strange cult that teaches gratitude, forgiveness, love, prayer, and surrender, and teaches that you have to learn to follow your own guidance and not rely on anyone else. Yeah, it's kind of a strange cult. I have to admit with that. But hey, at least, I'm not passing out the Kool-Aid, right? And if I were to pass out the Kool-Aid, I think my favorite Kool-Aid was grape. I liked the grape when I was a kid. That was my favorite Kool-Aid. Anybody else? Grape? Can I hear a vote for grape? Grape Kool-Aid? Anyway, so yeah. Unless anybody else has something to add to that, I'm going to go ahead and move on into the next topic here. And I just wanted that to be said. And I know the Kundalini wanted that to be said. It is not far from a lot of people's mind. Oh, yeah. So I have another. I see Mary Jean and Phil are typing, and it just hasn't come through. Dave writes, I think the concern over cult behavior is whether the teacher is faithfully transmitting the spirit rather than his own will, and discernment is often hard-earned. Yes. No grape for me, says Mary Jean. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. I agree. Whether the teacher is faithfully transmitting the spirit rather than his own will. And that is the discernment that a person must feel. And that is given, I think that's given in the writings. You look what the guy's doing, what the girl is doing, and you feel the truth or the clarity of what that person is saying and what that person is doing and how that person is saying and doing and how you feel about that. And if you can feel beyond your ego, you see, this is the hard-earned part. If you can look at this person without going into your ego with it, that is where true discernment will be found. Very important. Okay, so one of the announcements is I'm going to bring it back over here to Her Holiness Rosemary Goliath. Rosemary, do you have an announcement
Yes.
you would like to?
Announcement?
I hear a big question mark in your voice, so I'll go ahead and say it. And
No, it's okay. I can. It was soft when you said that. That was just verifying. Yes, I have two announcements, actually. The first one is the November seminar, November 14th and 15th, in Egan, and our same facility. We are very successful there, actually. So it's not based on the place, but it's just comfortable. And my information is rosemaryg@usinternet.com, and my phone 651-452-3161. And the other information is anyone who is listening who is in our Minnesota Kundalini community, we have our in-person meeting here. It's going to be at my house this time. It is a week from tomorrow, the 18th, in which we'll be Skyping with you, Chrism. I know you have it on your schedule. So we'll be doing that, and always a gift to us. Thank you.
Looking forward to it, my dear. Looking forward to it, and hopefully be Skyping and seeing Joey's beautiful, beautiful shining face too, yes?
Yes.
Good.
Well, I don't know about the shining. It's beautiful, of course.
Sounds good. Thank you both. Okay, and Phil Karuba is continuing, and he says, I read some negative comments about Chrism on Google. I must say that Chrism has been spot on regarding everything I have experienced thus far in my awakening, and although he is not my personal teacher, I am grateful for his YouTube videos. And, I'm grateful to you for watching them, Phil, and for listening and participating in this show. Thank you. And I thank all of you for listening and participating in this program as well. I have announcements to make now. Now, in February 2016, February 13th, 2016, I will be taking a group of people into Peru, and we will be exploring the Kundalini by way of the ayahuasca tea that is made from a liliana tree that is boiled with a leaf of the jungle called Psychotria viridis, and it is boiled for about 12 hours. And the different shamans have different recipes that they use, but I found a shaman that I feel very confident about his recipe, and I've taken other students down there to do that, and so I'll be sticking with him if I can. So on the 13th of February 2016, we'll be leaving from our various countries, and we'll be all meeting at the Lima airport, and from there we'll have already arranged transportation to the city of Pucallpa, and from the city of Pucallpa we'll be going to a Shipibo Indian village, hopefully, if room permits. And from there we'll begin our exploration of Kundalini by way of the ayahuasca. And I know that some people have already bought their tickets. I would encourage you to buy your tickets as soon as possible. Let me know on the Facebook group called Ayahuasca Peru. Ayahuasca spelled Ayahuasca. I think that's it. Ayahuasca Peru. On the Facebook network, and if you want to join that let me know who you are and where you heard about it. And if you have that interest, please go ahead and sign up on that group. I'd also like to let people know that I have a conference that I'll be speaking at in London on August 28th, 29th, 30th. I'll be speaking on Saturday the 29th, and at I believe 5:30 in the evening. And so if you'd like to participate in that, please go to www.tcch.org. And on the 5th of September, right after that speaking engagement in the great country of the United Kingdom, we will be doing a one-day presentation in London about the Kundalini. And so if you'd like to participate in that as well, I would welcome your attendance. And so moving onward and outward, Your Holiness, Amelia.
Yes, Chrism.
Could you please continue with your questions?
Yes. The next question. I often see people refer to grace on the groups. What exactly is grace?
Grace, in the context that I use it, is Kundalini. Grace is that divine force that we understand as Kundalini that lays dormant in the base of the tailbone through the eons of lives that are being lived and frequencies that are being refined to the point where it comes up in people like Elizabeth Dalton Gonzalez, Carolyn Diedratz, Fashji, Heidi Heinonen, Madeva Sabin, Phil Karuba, Tanya, Bruno Rodriguez. I'm not so sure. Mary Jean, I think you probably have this going too. You wouldn't be here. But everybody, Rosemary and Joey, Brooke, and somebody who's just listening, and Eileen, Laurel, of course, as well as Sailboat Mike and Lauren White and everybody else. It is grace because it's changing a person into a higher form of physical manifestation. Half grace, half mundane physicality. So I call it grace.
Thank you,
Hi, Mary.
The next question is something that was written to me, and I have permission to read it to you if I can do that, so it's a little bit longer.
Go ahead.
So, my whole body is swelling a lot today, awful from emotion. I am so tired and I have some kind of Kundalini headache. Something happened last night. It wasn't an OBE or an awakened dream, or maybe it was some kind of an awakened dream, but it wasn't the same as usual. I was more in sleep this time, but still I could control some things, like flying away from my bedroom window. But suddenly I was in my bedroom again, and I couldn't get away from this man, and she has man in inverted commas. I don't know who he was, but he was in my bedroom. Don't think he was an entity because he was on my dream, and it didn't feel like it. But I was very afraid of him. I was scared very much. Anyway, this is the embarrassing bit. He gave me an orgasm in my dream. I don't even know how. And she has a laughing face. But she said, as I awakened myself, I could feel it when I was awake and with my eyes open. And it was very weird. Then I went to the bathroom and I was still very scared, like the man was still there. Then I went back to bed saying my mantra, and I fell asleep again. And that was it. That was her dream and her experience.
What do you think happened there, Amelia? What would you say happened?
Okay, well, I mean, I suppose I'd be tentative. The man could be an entity because, entities are real in dreams as much as they are in the awake time. And it sounds like her experience transitioned both states of being awake and asleep, which is my understanding of, what she was saying. Her mantra was spot on, maybe saying it earlier when she began to feel scared. I'm not sure, Chrism. I'd like to hear. That would be my Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. Entities can be present in your dreams quite easily. They can be present in your daily existence quite easily. It's not a big step to be an entity and to be able to step into somebody's dream and then to give them an orgasm, especially if they're there with that purpose of using a pain or pleasure control mechanism upon the person. The other aspect of that may also be is that she may have been scared of this person just because this person was intruding themselves into their consciousness. Doesn't necessarily have to be a negative entity. I mean, sure, it could have had like maybe wings and a halo and maybe some soft, fluffy bunnies jumping around its feet, and that would have made the person a little less frightened. But it doesn't have to always be a bad entity that is giving somebody an orgasm or a teaching in a dream. But in this case, as I look at this and I listen to this, I see it as being a somewhat of a negative energetic force, and yet with the pleasure of the orgasm, that is also a harvesting opportunity as well. Many times, people will have their bodies accessed so that an orgasm will occur, so that burst of energy that comes through the orgasm can be harvested by the individual entity there. So, there's that as well. So we have multiple possibilities with that. I'm glad that they used the mantra. It's obviously somebody I gave a mantra to, or they have their own mantra. But there's just a couple of some of the possibilities that may have occurred for that individual.
Okay. And does a person just open to that, there are the possibility and forget about it then?
Well, no, I don't think you ever can forget about that. I don't think that's just going to leave the memory so easy. I think that, they can do the mantra more. I mean, I'm not real attached to the idea of doing the mantra every time you feel fear. I'm more attached to
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the mantra becomes associated with fear, and then, that programming takes place. What I am interested in seeing done is that the person, faces their fear and realizes that there is no entity out there that is more powerful than they are. She could have just shooed him away. She could have told him to get the heck out of there, which is what I told the entities that came to me.
Okay, and that's not engaging with them then, when you're in that place of...
It's telling them to get the heck out, or you just go straight to your Kundalini and you begin your Kundalini mantra, and by doing the Kundalini mantra, you begin to distance yourself from fear and from any kind of engagement-based manipulation. But that doesn't mean that the entity will stop. See, there's no guarantee that the entity will stop. And this is more of a trespass. This was more of a trespassing event. And I think the person really needs to, first of all, develop, this is what I'm reading for this individual, they need to develop their fearlessness. They need to develop their confidence and competency within the paradigm of having someone come in and to use another student's term, to stormtroop their brain. I love that term. Not everybody's, should be allowed to just come in and stormtroop your brain or your dreams. And so you could take a proactive stance and say, if you can create things in the astral or in the dream state that will prohibit an entity from feeling like it has total free will with your brain or with your experience.
Okay.
So courage also has...
Okay, and one can say the mantra, the Kundalini mantra, which would be, a mantra of surrender to the Kundalini without being in fear.
Say again?
one can say the Kundalini mantra in a circumstance like that where it isn't coming from fear. It's a statement of power, really. It's a statement of surrender.
Statement of
Kundalini.
power. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a statement of power.
That's great. Thank you, Chrism. Okay, so there was a question on the group, and it was, I have a lot of fear and I am lost. I'm doing the safeties, but I don't know. Sometimes I want to give up on the Kundalini. Maybe it's testing me. I don't know. I've started to have fears I never had before. What do I do?
Well, if I were you, I would recognize that you never get to give up on Kundalini. That is never an option. You don't get to just go, okay, I've had enough Kundalini for the day. I'm just going to call it a day. And then go to go play basketball or something. You never get to do that, and so that is not ever an option. You have fear. I understand that a person has fear. Fear is really one of the greatest things that a person surmounts. That is what will often bring a person to a private teacher or a flesh teacher, is that great level of fear that they have of being, attacked by entities or having some sort of a great level of fear that prohibits them from living their life in a way that they need to live it, i.e., having a job, driving a car, making money, getting the kids ready for school. I mean, these types of things, are very important to a person. And if you have so much fear that you're afraid to leave the closet in your bedroom, well, then you're going to have a real problem finding ways to do this, and not to mention, the negative impact that would have on the kids. So it's very important that you realize that the fears are something you need to face. The fears are tests, as you correctly surmised. The fears are tests that the Kundalini is placing in your path so that you can begin a series of building your resolve, building your ability to make the choice to do the right thing, even though it's painful at first, even though your ego is howling and screaming at you that this is the wrong thing to do. Oh my God, you should just run, you should just head for the hills, and yet the Kundalini is saying, no, this is building your resolve. This is giving you a platform of resolve that you can build other positive levels of Kundalini and experiences upon. So don't give in to your fears. Use the fears, as you correctly surmise, they're being given to you for, and that is to face them and face them down and give yourself to your Kundalini and allow yourself to pass through these difficulties with great levels of wisdom accompanying you, great levels of discernment accompanying you, great levels of understanding the truth of the Kundalini and how it tests you, because it will often test you through levels of fear.
Okay, Chrism, thank you very much. The next question is a little bit long. It's from the group as well, the private group. I recently sent in a sample of 23andMe, specifically because I was interested in the MTHFR gene regarding detoxing, and in general because I am adopted and don't have any medical info, and I wanted to see what else I could find out. I have been notified that the analysis of my sample was not successful and that they don't know why. Could this be a fluke, or could it be related to Kundalini? Chrism, could you say a little bit about that, how Kundalini changes your DNA? Then she says, or is there something already about this I should listen to or read that you've written? So could you say a little bit about that? Does Kundalini change the DNA?
Well, the Kundalini will certainly change the DNA, but I'm totally lost at what she's doing at the beginning of the question.
Yeah, it was looking for genetic information, and whatever she sent in wasn't a damaged sample, but they just were not able to give her information, and they don't know why. So she's wondering,
looking for her parents, is that it?
No, I think a gene regarding detoxing, I don't understand that either. Anyway,
well, I
maybe...
think that Kundalini just wouldn't want her to know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Kundalini can just totally block any of their instruments from working, no matter how pure and good the sample is. Not like it's like I said earlier. Just because you have a question doesn't mean that the Kundalini is automatically going to allow you to find the answer.
That's so true. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And she should just trust the levels that the Kundalini is detoxing within her, and stop, going through this. Oh gosh, my DNA, is activated or not activated or things of that nature. It's like, what difference does it make? Seriously.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
Why would a person want to know that from a scientific standpoint? And then why would they ask, as they're using science as a way to answer a question about their DNA and the level of detox that a DNA attribute can have, and then injecting Kundalini into it that science doesn't even recognize. Okay, but I can understand. I mean, the Kundalini can change the DNA, and does. I mean, but it's not like it's like God is waving a magic wand over the DNA. Okay, going, okay, telomeres, you will only have this level of expansion because now the Kundalini is within you, and bing, the DNA has now changed. It's not like that at all. It's because the DNA knows the Kundalini. It's very familiar with the Kundalini. The DNA is almost a conscious body within itself. You have to understand that every cell divides along the lines of DNA expansion, right? It'll get to a point, and that cell must divide, right? I mean, we all know this. But that cell represents an individual human being with all the hair, all the teeth, all the organs, everything intact. So those 17 trillion cells that, a generalized human being would have, they all have their own consciousness. They all have their own destiny. They have their own understandings of what is going on, and they understand. That community of 17 trillion within you understands the Kundalini. It's only your ego that is being allowed to take charge of everything that doesn't understand the genetic, proportions of what the DNA is expanding into or not. I don't find it. I find it to be antitrust, not in the legal sense of that word, but it is not trusting the Kundalini process. It's trying to find another scientific answer to a process that is being controlled by the Kundalini, in my opinion.
Okay.
Over.
Thank you. The next question. A strange thing has been happening to me recently. I feel not tolerant of people when I used to have much patience. I struggle to keep quiet and walk away. So I feel things are disimproving and I am not becoming a better person since it happened to me. Since I think they mean Kundalini happened to me.
Well, I would take out any and all caffeine or high fructose corn syrups or anything that would give you a level of anxiety or aggravation that's chemical-based, number one. I would forgive yourself and forgive any other people for bothering you, number two. I would be meditating in nature, natural in nature if possible, and if not, then clothed in nature. And I would just get out away from the people. Get out away from the people. Just be with nature. And I understand if you live in a city, you can't do that, but there are some parks in cities where you can actually, sit down on bare soil and just kind of be alone. Even if it's in your own little sphere, your little energetic sphere around you. Often levels of anxiety or tension can come from constantly being barraged by people that are of a vastly different energetic frequency. It can also come from sustained cell phone use or sustained use of electromagnetic frequencies that are not, that are causing an actual irritation to the person. And they do this, they do this with microwave signals, and this is actually a weapon of war where you can inflict anxiety on people by using frequency modulation. So I would look at the levels of frequency modulation that you may be inserting into your environment, i.e. cell phones or TV or radio or headphones or Bluetooth. Bluetooth is really good for that. I can take only very limited levels of Bluetooth and look at what you're putting into your system that is of an electromagnetic or frequency-based scenario, and discontinue it. Is your house under these very, very strong electrical lines? And Amelia, you remember those strong electrical lines that we experienced in Idaho, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah,
you can hear them going.
Yeah. And very distressing to tolerate as we were standing there,
That'll give you a headache right off the bat.
Yeah.
And so will entities give you a headache. If you're living around people that are really strong satanic cultists or people that are working with a lot of entities, things of that nature, that can also give you a headache. I remember Julie and I visited a woman up there selling domes, and oh my God, she's possessed by so many entities. They immediately tried to get into our heads, and that that gives you a headache. So there are plenty of things that can lead one into anxiety. But definitely take out the caffeine, definitely take out the sweeteners, definitely take out that which you can take out. Definitely look at your high tension wires around you. Definitely look at the amount of cell phone use, of Bluetooth use, of is your head right next to an internet router? What's going on? Are you sleeping next to an internet router that is broadcasting Wi-Fi signal all over the place? That's like, that's putting microwave right through your head 24/7, or well, not 24/7, but a lot, a very large portion of the time. So you need to look at those things, and see what you can take out of your experience in order to find some quietude, to find some serenity. If you can get out of the city, if you have a car, and the ability to put gas in it, get out of the city, go to a national park, go to a state park, go to a place where it's just, you're able to just be alone. Turn that car off. Get out of the car. Take a short walk into a different atmosphere and see if that anxiety is still there. That's what I would suggest. Over.
Thank you. Okay, this was on the groups. Can individuals use a program of Kundalini to abuse others?
Can individuals use a program of Kundalini to what's that mean? Is Kundalini a program? Is that what they're suggesting?
Well, that was the question, and there was a conversation happened after that, and it was about, can somebody on the phone raise a person's Kundalini?
Oh, I remember this.
I remember.
Yeah. This pertains to people that are possessed by a very strong group of entities, and they can basically get a possession going over the phone. Now, the entities will cause the person to say, "Oh yes, I have Kundalini. I'm very wisdom oriented. I have Kundalini, and of course, if you trust me and give yourself to me and all your money to me and your car and your house and your children to me, then of course I will give you the Kundalini that is in me." And then when they do that and the person is possessed, then they are abused. Then they are cussed at, and they're kicked, and they're shoved aside, and their bodies are taken advantage of in many different ways. They're brought into levels of addiction. They're brought into levels of it's like getting your whole 5-body system raped continuously. This is not a program of Kundalini. This is a program of possession, and it has nothing to do with Kundalini awakening. Even though the person may have been going for that, did they do any particular reading about the person? Did they do any? Did they do their homework? Did they read about Kundalini? Did they learn about Kundalini a little bit? Or are they just trying to go for that short path where all I have to do is dial a phone? Yay. Sometimes you're going to have to lift a finger. Sometimes you're going to have to do the work. And as the people that are here, that are continuously here, Carolyn, Elizabeth, Fashji, Heidi, Madeva, Mary Jean, Phil Karuba, Tanya, typing, and Bruno, all of these people know that you have to lift a finger, that you have to do the work. It is not just where you dial a phone number and you go, okay, I'm awakened now. I'm an awakened Kundalini master. I can do everything that I need to do. Yes, that is not it. And then Tanya saying, thank you. I've been so barraged today. I shall take a walk up a hill tomorrow. I can feel very torn between honoring what I need and trying to fulfill my responsibilities. She's talking about the last question. But then I don't fulfill them anyway when I get all stressed. Okay, you bet, Tanya. So you're going to have to lift the finger. You're going to have to do the work. If you think that you're going to get the Kundalini of the magnitude of the truth, the real divine engagement within you by dialing a phone and just saying, hi, okay, I'm ready, I don't think you're living in a world of reasonable responsibility. Even the Shaktipat I give, even though I don't have to have the person do the safeties, I want them to do the safeties. And I will predicate that successful Shaktipat on how they're doing the safeties, because I know they have to lift a finger. I know they have to find a way to go the full way within themselves. They must develop that discipline. They must develop that discernment. They must be willing to surrender. They must be willing to do a lot of things rather than just post a picture and say and make a declaration. Kundalini is life-changing. It changes your life. And if you think making a phone call and saying, okay, I give everything to you, is going to do it, well, then I think, you're sporting with being possessed by a whole group of entities that are doing everything they can do to corrupt your soul, to corrupt your equation. Very important that you realize that. There is no short path that is worth that risk, in my opinion. If you're not able to get up and do the work, then I don't think you should have Kundalini at all. So that's what I have to say about that.
Okay. And the last question, Chrism. Kundalini and gluten sensitivity, are the two related?
For some it is, and for some it isn't. I've Kundalini awakening for years now, and I've never had a gluten sensitivity. And yet I know that you, Santara, you've had a gluten sensitivity, right?
Yeah, there was a time when I was off all gluten and it was Kundalini given, but at that time there were other things as well, Chrism, that the Kundalini had me doing, and not eating gluten was important and it was necessary. And when I did, there were consequences. It hasn't stayed like that, on a level plane. It hasn't remained like that.
I mean,
Kundalini seems to change.
Imagine a person eating an entire cake all at once, right? I mean, imagine the level of gluten the level of
Go on, give away all my bad behavior.
Too much of a good thing, you know. You can
Is
drown
it organic?
in milk. I don't know what are you talking about.
I don't know. I'm just playing along.
Yeah. You know, too much gluten is not going to be a good thing. But is the sensitivity Kundalini induced? Can be. As I was saying during the whole sacrifice, you sacrifice your diet, and if the Kundalini one day, you know, gives you this compulsion to stay away from gluten foods, not because you're deathly afraid of it or you're buying into all of the advertising about it, not because you're doing those things, but because it is saying, okay, at this point, and until I inform you again, no more gluten for you, well, then you pay attention to that. But if it doesn't do that, doesn't mean that, you know, gluten in itself is just a neutral thing. You know, it's part of the wheat, it's part of the grain, and so it, you know, it has a place in those products. Whether your tolerance of it is appropriate for you at that time can be Kundalini induced, but it doesn't have to be.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you just sacrifice you sacrifice a lot. You don't, you know, you tend not to buy into the, oh my God, it's non-gluten, therefore gluten must be bad, therefore I don't want gluten, therefore I must be gluten sensitive. You don't buy into the labels. You don't buy into the all of a sudden gluten is bad man trip. You know, it's just silly because it's not bad.
It's the same with vegan, isn't it?
Oh, vegan's even worse. You know, vegan's even worse. So I won't go there. You know,
yeah.
You know, the best way, in my opinion, is to be an omnivore. You know, you eat what your body wants to eat. You don't eat what advertising or fear-based slogans compel you to eat. You pay attention to what your Kundalini is telling you. You put everything on the table and you let the Kundalini pick what it is you're going to eat. And if that means it's salads and fruits and nuts and vegetables, and that's fine. If it means that it's prime rib and chicken jerky or whatever, fine, then go with that.
Actually, Chrism, I'm just to share that I'm eating fish again for the very reasons that you're saying. And last weekend I ate beef, and it was something that I was given to do, to eat beef at this time, whereas my ego, I haven't eaten it since 2006. I wouldn't choose to eat it, but it was very clear, eat the beef. So I ate the beef.
Well, congratulations on paying attention to your Kundalini awakening. And I want to say, I want to take this time to say I appreciate everyone who's partaken of this program. Carolyn Deesratz, Elizabeth Dalton Gonzalez, Fashji, Heli Hainonen, Madeva Sadvi, Mary Jean, Phil Karuba, and Bruno Rodriguez. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brooke, for listening, and Just Listening for listening, and Rosemary for listening, and Eileen, and of course you and your husband John for putting this on. Thank you for taking the long route there and getting this particular program up and going and sticking to it, Amelia. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Okay, and so it looks like we are coming up to the end of the program. We're about 3 minutes away. I see Bruno is typing, and you're more than welcome, Phil and Mary Jane. Absolutely. I look forward to seeing you next week. Madeva Sadvi and Elizabeth and Bruno Rodriguez. Everybody, thank you for participating in this program. Yikes. And we will see you again next week. Bye-bye, everyone.